hello to my newly present forehead vein. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I'm going to go over a little bit of a summary and a review, but I am going to keep it basically spoiler free. So if you're interested in reading it, I'm actually not going to give away anything about the ending or any major details of the story. I'm just going to talk about some of my thoughts and what the general synopsis is. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig is about a woman named Nora who, following her attempted suicide, finds herself in a vast, seemingly endless library. And here the librarian is actually her childhood librarian from school, Mrs. Elm, who was the person who comforted her when she got the news that her dad passed away. The library is a representation of a space between life and death, where the books are different or parallel versions of her life. Each time Nora reads a book, she experiences that version of her life, and when the life is truly the life that she wants to live, Mrs. Elm tells her that basically she will just stay in that life indefinitely. I'm not going to go through all of the different lives that she lives because there are a lot of details to cover, and as I said, I want this to be mostly spoiler free. However, she does have a number of regrets in her life that drive her decisions regarding which lives to try, which lives she's most interested in seeing. And I thought that this was a really interesting concept because I think it's very relatable. It's very relatable that you have these big or small life regrets that you are interested in knowing how your life would have been different if you would have done something differently. Similar to some of Haig's other books, this novel deals with themes of depression and anxiety, both of which Haig suffers from and has written pretty openly about. Because of his own experience and perspective, he handles the topic really well, in my opinion. Though, of course, everyone's experiences with these illnesses are really different, so this might be a little more akin to his personal experience. I do think, though, that he generally captures this really well and handles it pretty tactfully. So Matt Haig writes nonfiction as well as fiction books, and if I'm being completely honest, I think that I prefer his writing style in this book over his nonfiction books that I've read. He tells a story really well, but doesn't necessarily craft a nonfiction narrative with the same grace that he seems to with a fiction narrative. I just noticed while reading this that I think it suits him a little bit better than his nonfiction writing. Again, that's just a personal opinion, but it was a really well told story, and it had a stronger narrative, blood flow, spine. I don't know how to explain it, but the backbone of the story was just really a lot stronger. As for the story itself, I found it very unique and captivating while also feeling really relatable. I think that the concept of parallel lives or parallel universes is obviously not new, but was executed really tactfully, and I think that a lot of people find themselves relating to the feeling of wasted or lost potential, which is what Nora's character feels. I also think it's really relatable to deal with life regrets, both big and small, because I think most people have at some point in their life wondered, what would have happened if I would have XYZ? So the idea of a library full of books where you can visit those potential lives is such a cool concept, such an interesting idea, and exactly what so many people wonder about when you think about all of those little or big life decisions that you did or did not make. I don't know, I found that really fun and interesting to read. I maybe didn't explain this really well, but it's called The Midnight Library because it's exactly midnight when she's there. So each of these lives starts at midnight that time. So she's not going back in time, they really are just parallel lives or parallel universes that are happening at the same time as her current life. As for a reading experience, the best way that I can sum this up is that this book was easy to pick up and hard to put down. So it was really a nice story that you kept wanting to pick up, or at least I did, and it was difficult to put down. Some nights before bed I was like, I just want to keep reading, I just want to see what happens next. And I think that that's just a well-crafted story. If you want to see what happens next and you're constantly engaged, I just think that that's a well-told story. I cannot say the same for his nonfiction that I have read. If you want to know some of my thoughts on his nonfiction, I did review Notes on a Nervous Planet, so I will put a link to that here. I was not as keen on that book as I was on this book. I think fiction may be a stronger place for Matt Haig, or maybe I just enjoy it more. But yeah, this book was one of those books that I just kept wanting to turn the page on, and I think there was something just so interesting about exploring the different lives of this character. I'm not going to give away the ending, but yeah, I absolutely devoured this book. Something that I also really liked about the layout of this book is that the sections are divided in such a way that you're never reading a huge uninterrupted chunk. There's always a little bit of a break here and there. So I did really like the layout of this. I felt like it was never too much story at once for you to be able to focus on. This is my first fiction read by Matt Haig, but I know that he does have other fiction books, both for children and for adults, so I'm really interested in reading some of his other fiction books. I think How to Stop Time is the really big one, so I will have to look into that. One complaint I do sort of have about the narrative surrounding Nora's depression in the story is that she is dealing with situational depression, or at least that's what they talk about in the book, that she's dealing with situational depression, and that is a very real. But I do think that part of the story is the idea of changing your perspective when you cannot change your circumstances, and I completely agree with that. I think that's a really good skill that a lot of people need to use, but I also think that you could consider it a little bit dangerous or even negligent to perpetuate the idea that depression can be improved only by improving your perspective, because that's not true. We know that's not true. So I do think that that's a small complaint I have, that it shouldn't be taken as anything more than just the story, because some people have depression that isn't situational, it's chemically imbalanced. So you can still have a great life and still be depressed. While I think that it's a good thing to learn to have a better perspective surrounding your life or your circumstances, I also just think that that's not enough for everybody, especially people with like major depressive disorders or people who truly have panic and anxiety disorders. It's a good thing to try to do, but it's not necessarily enough for every type of illness, because everybody's illnesses look different. But that's all I'm gonna say, because it's just a minor complaint really. I think in the scheme of this book, it's generally actually handled pretty well. It does make you feel hope for Nora when she's exploring all of these different lives, and I think that that's a really good thing. Overall, I think it's well written. I think it's a very interesting story, and I think that the layout makes it easy to keep reading and to keep the reader engaged. So I would definitely recommend it. I think I would probably give it 5 out of 5, honestly. There's just one small caveat that I had, but generally it's just a well-written, engaging story. Those are all of my thoughts on The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree, whether or not you like this book, or if you haven't read it, are you planning to read it? That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later.